What keeps you awake at night?
Sea levels are rising globally.
Fears fueled by horror stories.
Among the worst flu season in a decade, and it hasn't peaked yet.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous.
Another series of deadly terror attacks.
I don't want to be blamed if you cannot get to sleep tonight.
Well, it's been a week, gang.
Yeah.
It has been
sure
a long...
has.
With Bree's permission, we're going to talk about the audio from last week.
Oh my god, roast me. Fucking roast me.
It was a stressful week. This keeps us up at night.
This audio, bros. Oh my god. I don't know what happened to Bree's audio. We're convinced it was the haunting of the house that she once lived in. Perhaps the roommates. Who is to say?
Awful.
But there was like a weird whirring noise, and also her tablet recorded from the tablet mic, so there was echo, and it took me 6 hours to record to like edit the 45-minute episode.
Yeah, we were at like DEFCON 1. We were waiting for the nuke. We were not. Oh man. And it was our first guest star episode because of course.
Yeah. I just want to apologize to Ross first and foremost.
He was so great. It was such a good episode otherwise. We had such a good time.
He was so lovely in everything. He was so smart. And his podcast is so good.
It is.
And if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should.
Ross and Carrie, it's so good.
Yeah,
it's
please
so good.
Enjoy it.
My whole thing is my audio has always been shit. It's always been shit, and like I think that it was a combination of a lot of things, but one of them was recording in my tent basement hellhole that I recorded in. I am now in a new house.
Nice.
I am determined
a round of
to
applause
make my audio not sound like absolute garbage.
Thanks, Olivia.
And I just really want to apologize to the people that listen to us because, like, I really want this podcast to be successful and lovely, and I think that we do a pretty good job here. And we want y'all to all have good content and high quality stuff. So I fixed it. I spent hours yesterday after moving trying to fix my audio, and it's working.
She worked super hard. We're proud.
Oh,
I'm so sweaty. It also could be the bacon. I had bacon and my sodium levels are at like an all-time high right now.
Yeah, she's sweating grease right this moment.
I had butter for the first time in 3 weeks because like I buy cooking oil and that's what I use for everything because it's so cheap.
Oh.
So I make toast and I just put cooking oil on it.
I mean, butter isn't that expensive.
Olivia.
I don't have the space. There's one fridge and 4 roommates, guys.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Space is in short supply, is what I'm trying to say.
On toast?
I remember those days.
Yeah, I don't know. Just like...
Cooking oil on toast actually sounds like a fate worse than death. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Brooke, do you want to leave the call now, or how should we rearrange the podcast? Is this...
do you need to find somebody else? I could forward you some resumes. I'm so sorry, guys.
I think we can take a unanimous vote here and just say that you're out now.
Well,
Welcome to Olivia's farewell episode.
Can we title it that?
Yeah.
Or is that really fucked up? Will that like fuck people?
Confuse everybody.
That's gonna make people so sad.
Don't do that.
Like, no, what?
That's clickbait.
I love clickbait. Speaking of clickbait, what a way to transition. So
segues are weird.
So today's episode is for a series on unsolved non-murder related mysteries. That's
also, she's Olivia and I'm Brooke.
Okay.
And I'm Bree.
If you don't know who I am at this point, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
They don't know who we are yet.
I'm
listeners.
Olivia Leland. You should know who I am at this point.
You don't know who the fuck I am by now.
You don't know me. And I'm Brooke Morris.
Sorry, that was really that was like an innate reaction.
It was just so aggressive.
I've had a really really long week.
You're
Oh my
powerful and you
God.
know what you're about.
What?
You're powerful and you know what you're about.
Yeah.
That's true. You can't argue with that.
I have inferiority issues, and I'm
Oh,
very
God.
self-conscious. I know
Olivia,
exactly
Olivia.
what I'm about, and everybody needs to know who I am at all times. So,
So anyway, we're doing
Unsolved mysteries that are not murders.
non-murder related unsolved mysteries. Very stoked. Very nervous.
Why?
So,
we're doing. Can we talk about the fact that we will eventually do murder? It's just going to be a total separate thing.
We're teasing it
yeah.
out. We gotta leave something to be desired for the.
We don't want to take up the murder bracket this early. Come on. We don't want to peek or anything like that.
I don't want to step on any true crime toes or anything.
Sorry.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That sounded like a toad? That was a toad.
Okay, rude.
I'm sorry. Oh.
The level of unprofessionalism.
So, my topic.
Toad burps, toad burps, toad burps.
So, I thought of this as a topic weeks ago when I was still at community college, as a matter of fact. Wow. I was with two friends of mine, Solveig and Chase. Shout out to them. They listen to the podcast.
What's up?
Hey guys, what's up? Thank you for getting your flu shots. I know I'm very annoying. Love you both. And we were talking about the missing Malaysian Airline flight.
Oh, Jesus.
And we brought up the black box recordings because I had thought that they had found them. And I admitted that I really had no idea what happened. I honestly, when it happened, I didn't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
God, this happened, I think it was 2014?
Yeah, it was a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 2014. I was in, senior year having an existential crisis. This was not on my radar. Wow, that's a pun.
Ha. Really, really good, classy one.
Yikes.
God, we're gonna get letters.
And so I never really knew anything about it, and I thought this is a really great opportunity for me to learn more about it and learn about the crazy conspiracies. How wrong I was. So before I begin, and I'll talk about this more in depth because I'm gonna have a whole thing. There's a good page and a half here that's just straight rant. As we do with me.
Sure.
And so
I see now Ross leaves and we're back to our regularly scheduled programming of just yelling.
getting drunk on rosé and yelling about fatalism. So
Yes. It's good to be
I
home.
was intending to have a little fun with this one and talk about crazy conspiracies from plausible to funny. And in researching this, I feel like I underestimated the gravity of the situation. So before we even begin, just to kind of get a gauge of the room, maybe I'm a moron. How many people do you think died?
God, was it what, a 747?
Yeah. 777.
Oh, God, it was a 777? Oh.
Yeah. Well, how many people do you think died? Just rough estimate. Don't
500.
That's cheating. 500? Wow, okay. Bree?
507.
Jesus fucking Christ. Gotta one-up me.
Okay, well, so it was a total of 227 passengers and 12
Oh, you totally
crew
ruined your
members.
bit.
Well, I mean, when I started it, I don't know why I thought it was like this. I guess I don't know, maybe I assumed it was a smaller flight, maybe
Oh, okay. Yeah.
less than 50 people. I didn't realize it was a big ass Boeing.
No, yeah.
yeah.
Usually international flights are massive
Very big.
planes.
Very big.
Yeah.
And so in beginning to research this, I think, and this kind of ties into to not to get political this early in the episode, 10
God
minutes
forbid.
in. But what with the shooting that happened a little earlier in the week for us in where was it? I'm forgetting it. Off the top of my
Thousand Oaks.
head. Yeah, Thousand Oaks. Somebody had made a comment I feel like we often forget that there's more victims than just the people that died. It's
Oh, yeah.
the families. So, let's, for the sake of my math being easy, 200 passengers, each of them, let's say like 50 people in their immediate setting would be distraught. That's like a lot of people that would be like at a net affected by this.
Easily crosses into the thousands for sure.
Yeah. So I don't want to minimize this situation, and so I made the executive decision last night. I've been waffling about this for weeks, whether or not I should include those like crazy ones that I was going to. And I made the executive decision last night. I feel like I would feel bad about it if I did.
That's a fair call, I think.
Because I understand that this is a very popular conspiracy theory.
Yeah, a lot like the Ebola thing. It became very memey for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just, after reading a lot about it, it didn't sit right with me to talk about all the weird pop culture conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
So I kind of rewrote it in like a matter of 24 hours so that it's more about the two main theories that you will read if you look this up. The ones that to me seemed the most reasonable, the most rooted in reality, and I'll talk at the end about the one that makes the most sense to me.
For sure.
So let's start with the straight facts.
Cool.
Just like 100% what we know, period. This is going to be a little dry, but...
we talked about the biology of viruses for 3 episodes in a row, so I think we're probably
okay, so
good.
we're fine. Okay, so like I said, the Malaysian Flight 370, also known as MH370 or Flight 370, it was a Boeing 777-200ER passenger plane. The plane itself is a very safe model. Since its release in 1994 to 2016, there's only 5 known hull losses. The first one being in 2008. That was a fatality-free crash of the British Airways Flight 38. And I'm going to note what each of these are because this is very important, right?
For sure.
Sake of assuming things later. This was due to crystals forming in the fuel, causing internal issues with the machinery. In 2011, a cockpit fire occurred on Egypt Air 667 when it was parked. No fatalities. In 2013, 3 passengers died when the Malaysian Airlines Flight 214 crashed. I don't think I had been able to find. It was a landing crash, which is like usually most airplane crashes actually occur when they're taking off and when they're landing.
Yeah, I'd read that somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So. In 2014, we have a different Malaysian Airlines flight, Flight 14. That was gunned down, though.
Jesus Christ.
So not at the fault of the Boeing engineers. And then in 2016, there's an Emirates Flight 521, and that was another crashing while landing. So yeah, that seems like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, that's like... not a lot for a plane model.
Also, the lack of casualties is crazy.
Yeah, the one that was gunned down, there was definitely casualties, but like considering that wasn't an engineering failure, it was a,
Right, they were gunned down, so.
Yeah, you know, this is a very safe model of plane. There were not really any like consistent things like that always happened that were wrong with it, at least to me when I was researching it. And for context, I want to explain how safe it is to fly on a plane. So I looked up the data from 2013 because that's the year that the Malaysian flight disappeared. I thought it seemed most topical. So according to the National Highway Safety and Traffic and Safety Administration, they're going to send me some letters for fucking that up.
That's libel and slander, so...
Our letters are one way, ma'am. So in 2014, there were a total of 30,000 fatal crashes in the U.S. So that's about 10.27 deaths per 100,000 people, right?
That's a good percentage.
Less than ideal. So compared to airplanes, the National Transportation Safety Board in 2014 said there were a total of 29 accidents, but 0 fatal accidents in passenger crafts. This is U.S. planes. And, again, that seems like a really high number of accidents, but that's apparently, I talked to my friend about this, 2014 was particularly high. In other years, the accidents are actually much lower.
Yeah.
So that was just an elevated year.
Yeah, I read somewhere, and this could just be me repeating internet garbage, but I read that it's more dangerous to ride on a roller coaster than it is to fly in a plane.
Yeah. There's also just people don't really consider how dangerous it is to drive.
Yeah.
There is a 1 in 77 chance you'll die from a car crash.
Oh, I hate those odds.
Yeah, and so like the statistical likelihood that there were 0 fatal accidents in U.S. planes in 2014. Like that's pretty good odds, right?
Yeah.
So context for this: Boeings are very, very safe, and the statistical likelihood of you getting in a plane crash is slim.
Very.
So MH370 was first flown May 14th of 2002. Since then to its disappearance, it had accumulated 53,000 plus hours of flight time with excellent performances. Only one incident occurred in August of 2012 where the wingtip was damaged, but it was fully repaired and there were no other reported problems with that. The last maintenance check was in February of 2014, which was a little less than a month before its disappearance, and it came out exemplary. It's fully up to code. And the replenishment of the crew's oxygen was performed on March 7th, 2014. Nothing abnormal was found. The oxygen systems were in perfect condition. So
no issues that were known.
Yeah, no known issues. It was in perfect condition to fly. For the crew, just some, statistics on them. All the crew was Malaysian. The captain was Captain Zari Ahmad Shah, who was a veteran pilot. He had over 18,000 hours of flight time under his belt. He'd actually constructed a flight simulator in his own home.
Damn.
Very dedicated man to practice. His co-pilot was Farik Abdul Hamid, who had 2,700 hours of flight time. 39 of those were on a Boeing 77, so this is like kind of newer for him. But this was his last flight before he was to be examined as a pilot.
Fuck's sake.
Kind of sad.
Why is it always like that?
Yeah.
That's so eerie.
Yeah, he was really young. It was sad. So there's 227 passengers, 152 were Chinese citizens, 38 were Malaysian. The remaining passengers were from a variety of countries. A total of 20 were employees from Freescale Semiconductor. All random statistics seems to me. I just thought I'd list it for the sake of clarity.
Gotta have them facts.
So let's get into the gritty part, the day of the disappearance.
Okay.
So again, oxygen supplies were replenished on March 7th. On March 8th, 2014, the plane departed at 12:42 in the morning, local time, for an overnight flight to Beijing, which was set to arrive at 6:30 a.m. local time. The plane reached 35,000 altitude at 1:01 in the morning, and that's typical cruising altitude. So when you're flying in a plane, that's the altitude that they maintain in the air until they land. So a system was set up within the plane system where routine flight messages were sent automatically to the radio tower every 30 minutes. Whether or not the crew was in control of that, that was the way that the transmission system worked, right? Captain Zari confirmed that 370 was flying at altitude 35,000 at 1:19 in the morning. And the last message that the air traffic controllers received was "Good night, Malaysian 370," just before it left the range of the control towers over the South China Seas at 1:22 in the morning.
Now, good night, like, is that normal or is that something weird?
No, it is very normal for them to leave zones. So it was saying, okay, well, we will see you on the other side. We're exiting range. All is well. We've reached our cruising altitude. Roger
see you
that.
Later. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just confirmation, and then they left range. From there, it was set to fly a pre-programmed course. But military radar continued to track the plane, and it veered off course westward. So it's coming from Malaysia. I want to say about northeast-ish, if you can imagine that for me.
Yeah.
Took a sharp turn west. and started going a little bit southwest. So at this point, it would be expected that either the co-pilot or pilot tune into the Ho Chi Minh air traffic control frequency, which is in the area that they were at.
Right.
Standard when you're in, the air area, like you want to talk to the towers and communicate, especially if something's going wrong, right?
Which clearly it already was. Yeah.
Right. They were in Vietnam-controlled airspace. That is standard. But allegedly, the switch was never made, and they never connected with the Vietnam-controlled area. The transponder stopped transmitting, and it was assumed that it had been turned off.
Huh.
Because they were unable to connect to it.
Okay.
So up until 2:22 in the morning, the plane was tracked by military radar until it escaped the boundaries of Vietnam. Now, it can be assumed at this point, if there's an aircraft in the air, other local militaries would be tracking it.
Sure.
But the problem herein lies, many countries are very reluctant to share their transmission data because it would kind of expose their military capabilities. It would expose, their ability to track and other important locations.
Right.
But allegedly, the governments of Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam confirmed they had spotted the plane on their radar before the transponder was believed to be turned off. They were unable to make any connection, they say. So at 2:25 in the morning, right, an airline satellite received a log-on request from MH370's flight system. So at both 2:39 in the morning and 7:19 in the morning, which is, again, after the flight was due to have landed in Beijing, the system responded to updates from the satellite, but the cockpit answered no calls. I assume that this is automatic, so it suggests that it had the ability to connect, but nobody was manually connecting anything. Like, this is an automatic update
Right.
request.
No one was denying that
it.
call.
Yeah. No. It was connecting, but there was no response. So this was happening. People were sitting in Beijing waiting for their loved ones to exit the plane, right? Which is about 6:30 in the morning, more or less considering traffic time. So almost an hour after the intended arrival, they have not showed up. And an hour after they were supposed to arrive, the Malaysian Airline companies finally make the announcement that the planes disappeared. So that was at 7:24 in the morning. They had no confirmation whether the plane crashed or not, and they said that it had veered off course. When they made this announcement, they didn't clarify that the plane was still in the air. They just said that the plane was off course, and they're sending out a search and rescue team. But it is interesting they didn't clarify that it was still in the air. Even though they were tracking it, again, they had the log-on request at 7:19. They knew at the very least it was still in the air by then.
At that point. Wow.
So, which is weird. So at 3:70, sorry, not at 3:70. So MH370 sent a log-on request to the satellite at 8:19:29 a.m. Ground control responded to the request, and it was logged at 8:19:37, less than 10 seconds later, that the aircraft acknowledged ground control's response. I assume this is an automatic. It has to be at this point. Some argue it is, some argue it isn't.
Okay.
They acknowledged the ground control's response, and this was the last piece of information that was received by the aircraft. There's a lot of misreporting. They say, the last piece of communication they received is the Goodnight Malaysian 370.
Right, because that makes for good headlines.
Right, and that's the last that's the last response they got from the crew, so that's not incorrect. It's all the data afterward to me seems automatic. These were automatic processes controlling, happening with the system.
Yeah.
Or at least you can argue that it's automatic. All we know is that the plane was there.
Right, we know it existed and was still in the air.
Yes. So by 12 p.m., right, which is about 6 hours after it was supposed to arrive, they announced that the aircraft was likely crashed and there were no survivors.
Was it being tracked at this point?
Right. So like I said, it went off of military radar, at about 2 a.m.
Right.
Okay.
So the only reason they knew it was in the air is because it was responding to these logon requests, which means it must have been close enough within distance that it would be able to perform these requests. Right. And that was as late as exactly 8:19:37 in the morning.
I guess my thought about it is that, like, if other air traffic controllers know that this plane is missing, you would think that there would be some way to, like, keep track of it at the point when it was seen. But I don't know.
There
I'm not
is
an air
enough
traffic
data.
controller.
Yeah, if you look up the map for this, and we can post it because it'll be topical and relevant when we post the episode. They do have a map that shows its departure when it veers right at about 1:30ish in the morning, and then when it veers a little more north, and then it disappears. Yeah, so it turns twice. It goes about northeast, and it veers westward, and then it veers one more time, and they're able to do this with tracking it with military radar.
Sure.
And at 2:22 in the morning, it is completely off military radar. Partially, it is out of bounds, but if the transponder is, if the transponder is far enough away, you can't track it. But
but
if
they turned it off.
If all three
Got it.
countries can attest, yes, we weren't able to find them, their transponder was off, all you're going to be able to do is ping. You're not going to be able to do GPS tracking.
Right. Okay. Never mind.
Yes. No, good clarifying. Yes. This is a very detail-oriented episode.
Yeah, there's a lot to this, so it's good to have all the ducks in a row.
Yes. So the search began, and a lot of you remember this. I remembered it. I remembered it lasted a really long time.
Yeah.
So this is kind of when the world turned in. I feel like most of us didn't really hear about it until the search was coming in.
Right.
You know what I mean? So initially the search was localized around the Southeast Asia area. But then with further evidence and more tracking, physics and math, the search was moved to the Indian Ocean a week after its confirmed disappearance.
Oof.
So, yes, an extensive search was going on, but I think they were probably looking in the wrong area. Yes, never good. So with further analysis, it was moved towards the Indian Ocean. This was initially only confined to a surface search. At the very least, they were looking for debris.
Right.
So yes, like the hull would sink. There would be many parts of the plane that would sink if it did indeed crash into the ocean, which is what was predicted at the time. But they were looking for some kind of debris. Like with a crash this large, there would be something that they could see.
A sign.
To at least start the search.
Right.
Now, I think a lot of people, I don't know, I've seen this argument a few times that they said they didn't search enough. Is that something that you also heard, that their search was very limited?
I didn't even hear that much.
On your radar. Okay. So I didn't realize how extensive this was. Between March 18th and April 28th, through the use of 19 vessels and additional military aircraft,
Jesus.
a total of 1.8 million square miles of ocean were searched.
Okay.
Fucking Christ.
Yeah, this is the most extensive search in aviation history.
Wow.
And they found nothing.
Not even a trace.
They found nothing.
Jesus.
Wait, I'm sorry. Am I mistaken? I thought in the beginning of the episode you said that they found the box.
They did not. Because I thought that they did, because there were rumors that went around that they did find the box. And maybe you remember that. I remember there was reporting. It was like a weird Twitter thing where it was like, do you remember that? It was like, there's this weird recording on my phone and it's saying like numbers and letters.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
One, it's a hoax, so we're just gonna like get rid of that. But they never found the black box, and I looked this up. I looked why. This is a little seedy, I have to admit. Not looking good on them. The battery on the black box to allow it to be tracked was 2 years expired. So that doesn't mean it would be impossible to find, but it means that the beacon that they would use to find it would be greatly reduced, and the battery wouldn't be dead, but the lifetime of the battery would have gone a lot more down.
And they didn't think to replace that during their.
I mean, they
their
probably
checks
weren't
that
expecting their
happened?
plane to go off course and disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but
Yeah,
It's a
no,
safety
I
issue,
agree. I
right?
think that's kind
No,
of fishy, kind of shitty. Also kind of calls into question how thorough these searches are, because, I mean,
Right.
like,
Right.
in the grand scheme of repairs, I feel like that'd probably be low on their priority list. But again, I also don't know, how much grossing, like, how much money that this
That's what I
company
was
is
gonna
making,
say.
if they're on a tight budget. Like, I don't know why that battery didn't get replaced. To me, it seems like a quick fix. But the black box was never found.
God.
So we have no recordings. Again, all we have is the Goodnight Malaysian, some radar up until 2:22 in the morning. We know that they were at least in the air until about 8:19, but we don't know what happened between 2:20 in the morning and 8:19. We don't know. We just know it was there.
Right.
just
Yeah.
6 hours
Yeah.
of just nothing. Wow. Well,
So, an underwater search was ordered through predictive technology. They narrowed it down to 9,700 square miles,
Okay. It's better than 1 million, but yeah.
yes.
I guess. It cost $155 million to do this search. Yielded nothing.
Oh my God.
And so, as of October 2017, there's been a total of 20 debris that have been found washed up on the shores of the Indian Ocean.
Oh my God.
But they haven't found anything. Like, it's essentially been, oh, I found a little bit of the wingtip. Oh, I found like some plastic. Like, it's no other evidence has been found.
There were no bodies to bury.
There are no bodies. There was no plane. Nothing. They didn't find anything. And
Is this the end of your story? Is this where...
and that's it.
And that's what keeps me up
No,
at night.
So these are the facts. Also, I do want to qualify for people wondering. I believe there has been 2 other searches down. I just didn't bother writing it in because nothing has been found. Right? Like, there's been a lot of money spent looking for things. There was a search as recently as like May of 2018. Nothing. So,
I'm actually shocked that they're still looking, but that's...
Yeah.
well, that's because recently, I believe it was this year, the Malaysian airline company had come out with their final statement on what they believe the cause was. So I'm going to go into the first... So here's the first theory that is out and available, and the most... I'm hesitant to say the most popular. This is the most... I'm going to say at the very least, it's the most boring theory. But to me, it's the most plausible one.
Right, yeah, the simplest thing is gonna be what actually happened. Was
Occam's
that Occam's
razor.
razor? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, true crime listeners, check out our podcast, I Said Goddamn. We're a true crime comedy podcast hosted by 2 besties who like to share messed up cases that make you say goddamn. Every Sunday, we try to one-up each other's story by sharing a horrific case the other has never heard of. Along the way, we splash in some wildly inappropriate jokes and colorful language. Listen every Sunday from any of your favorite podcast directories. Also, follow us on Twitter at ISGD Podcast or visit our website, isgdpodcast.com.
And so I asked my friend about this too, who he flies and he has his flight license. He said this is probably something he considered too. It seems very minimal, but this is... We'll talk about it. Let's unpack it.
Cool.
This was the official story of the Malaysian Airline company. A lot of the victims' families feel that this is not correct. And I want to qualify that, but I'm going to go into what they're arguing.
Okay.
So that is a cabin pressure leak leading to hypoxia. So some anatomical background on the plane. When a plane takes off, it maintains the air pressure of the surrounding air up to 8,000 feet above sea level. So then from there, the aircraft is pressurized in order to maintain the pressure that occurs at 8,000 feet, right? So when you are up at 35,000 feet, you're experiencing an altitude of 8,000 feet. And this is to ensure that there's adequate oxygen levels, because when you're at 35,000 feet, you will not get enough oxygen in your blood and you will die. That's what hypoxia is, right? A lack of oxygen in your blood and then you die. Higher up in altitude you get, the less dense the air gets, leading to low levels of oxygen. So if anybody's seen Incredibles 2, like, you know, when she's like flying super high up in the air and like the bad lady puts on her mask and she's fine and Mrs. Incredible is getting like really, really woozy and dizzy, she's experiencing hypoxia. That's what that is.
Love that.
I like how our best example is from a Disney Pixar movie.
If you've seen Disney's Incredibles 2, if you will, I'm a fan of film.
I'm a connoisseur, one might say.
I love that. I want to think of it as like they're explaining the phenomenon. You know, they're at like a board meeting of just like lots of fancy people in suits, and all of a sudden they just go, "All right, so here's my PowerPoint," and it's just Mrs. Incredible.
It's just Incredibles 2 on a big screen. They watch the whole movie.
They bring in one of those TVs that they brought in elementary school.
Yes,
on
the
a cart.
VHS.
And everyone goes, "Yes, movie day."
Well, back to death.
Back to death.
God.
So, if there were a problem with the mechanism pressurizing the cabin, even a malfunction while flying that causes slow depressurization, the availability of oxygen would decrease. So if oxygen levels in your blood start dipping at the 35,000 feet, the occupants will develop the hypoxia, which is generally accompanied with confusion, headaches, trouble breathing, and then death, because low oxygen levels mean that your brain cells start dying because you're suffocating.
Right.
In the most elegant way I can put it, you are suffocating in a flying metal tube.
They wouldn't have even known what was happening. That's so terrifying.
Right. So, how common is that, do you ask?
I mean,
Well, I hope none of you are flying soon.
I have to fly in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You should hang up the call right now.
Oh, God.
Cool.
Olivia,
No, you're over the
is
land. You'll be fine.
insane.
They'll definitely find you. So. I'm sorry. Back to the seriousness. Hold on, my ear itches like
Fuck you,
hell.
Olivia.
Oh,
Fuck.
God
okay.
damn it.
My ear has been itched. Have we shuffled? Oh. Yeah, sex is good, but have you itched your ear?
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Is this
Hey,
sorry.
I'd rather die than wait one more second to know how common this is.
Yeah.
Dude, like, it's a funny bit. Haha, Brooke's freaking out, but like, I am seconds from anxiety.
You're fine. About 40 to 50 times a year internationally, there is some malfunction in plane machinery that causes rapid decompression.
What percentage is that?
Okay,
It's
well, I mean,
probably,
like, imagine in a given day, there are literally thousands of
Right.
flights.
This is what, like, it's 0.000 a number percent, but like, oh, God.
Well,
Okay, 40 to 50 times a year. So I want to qualify in the grand scheme of things for Brooke's sake, and I'm sure for anyone listening with anxiety that might have to fly soon. Globally in a single day, that's like, it's so infrequent. That's like less than 0.25%. It's
Also,
very
it's an
small.
average, so like...
Yeah. So, you're fine. So what happens when this occurs? Okay, well, in an ideal world... I feel like this is not a good episode for you, bro.
I'm suffering. Yeah, I gotta go to Florida for Christmas break, so I guess it's not 3 weeks. It's like more like 6, but
You're gonna be fine.
totally not gonna die. Definitely.
No, you're gonna be fine. Because you see, in an ideal world, the pilot would put on an oxygen mask immediately
That's the thing. Is they have
to keep
stuff
themselves
for that.
alert. Right.
Yeah.
And as long as the pilot's got the oxygen mask on, the plane will sense if, depressurization has occurred, and that's when the little baggies pop out, the masks.
Put on your mask before helping others.
See, also, please fucking do that. Like, on a side note,
don't.
before I proceed, don't be a hero. Put on your face mask first, because if there is rapid decompression occurring, you will pass out in less than a minute. So,
also, the reason why they have that too is like,
you can
if
help
everyone
others.
takes care of themselves, it's fine. Like, obviously there's children, there's babies or whatever.
Right.
Take care of yourself first.
Also, worst case scenario, you put your, child's mask on first, you pass out, because you didn't put yours on first.
And now
What
they're an
now?
orphan. Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Wow. That's
so
a lot
dark.
of judgment.
Well, I was gonna say, like, well, then what happens to the child who's gonna take care of them after that point? You know?
Yeah.
That is.
But,
I mean, that's the point.
The idea
You know,
is that if you're an adult and you've got a child next to you, put on your mask, and now you have
Put
the
on yours
capability
first.
to help the other person.
Yeah.
Your child doesn't know what's going on. So
Yeah,
they're not going to
exactly.
save your
Also,
life.
you cannot help your child if you pass out.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I'm meant.
yeah. You know, we're all. I'm being serious because I am not joking when I tell you you will be out very fast if rapid decompression occurs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the masks will come out, you put them on, and enough oxygen is pumped through so that the pilot can, continue a rapid descent. They will redescend back to 8,000 feet, where it's not going to matter. Like the air pressure is going to be fine. Everybody's going to be fine. If they're able to, compress it again, if everything is fine, they'll go back up to altitude and it'll be okay. But if there is some kind of malfunction, they will continue to fly at 8,000 feet and then land at the nearest airport,
Right.
which is like everywhere. There's airports everywhere. So you're going to be fine, like unless there's a breach, which for the most part, like these things are very often managed. Like how often do you hear about a plane crash?
Right, so this is the thing, is that,
never?
like, 50 times a year, sure, but, like, almost none of them end like this.
Yeah. Like, again, pilots are very specially trained. There's a lot of very advanced equipment on the airplanes.
Right.
You're going to be fine, right? Right.
But what happened with this one?
Well, so again, this is a best case scenario where the pilot is completely coherent.
Right.
So there are instances when rapid decompression occurs faster than the pilot is able to react and fix the situation. If the pilot realizes too late that there's a breach or malfunction, things can very, very quickly go sideways. In this case, if all goes well, the plane will detect the pressurization and automatically release the face masks, which I said earlier. But, I used one example because there's only so much I can broke out in a day. The Helios 522 in August of 2005 departed at 9:07 a.m. local time. A cabin pressure warning occurred at 9:12 a.m. at 12,000 feet. And the last contact with the crew occurred 8 minutes later at 9:20 in the morning at 28,000 feet.
Okay, so that worries me. What was going on between the time of the warning?
That one specifically, the pilot had said that there was there's a problem with the air vents, like this air circulation. He contacted ground control and said, like, hey, like everything's fine. We've dealt with it. And so it was at this point the plane, it's on autopilot. Most planes are. And there is a quick chase after the plane because they're not responding to messages and they're flying off course. They were due to land at like 10:30ish and they are still in the air at 11. So, it is reported that there are fighter pilots that, go alongside the plane to get an idea of what's going on, and they see that the pilot is completely slumped over, which means pilots are out.
Right.
And at 11:54 a.m., there is a Mayday message that does occur, and that's because one of the flight attendants was able to come back to consciousness by putting on an emergency oxygen tank, and he was able to get to the front of the plane. But he had little to no training for how to land a plane. So he was not able to land the plane. The fighter pilot saw him up front. He waved, and the plane crashed into a mountain when the fuel supply was exhausted. Sad.
Okay.
And I also want to qualify that I did not know that there is about 15 minutes of oxygen supply. So
I'm sorry.
So
Excuse
we're just gonna demolish all of the security we just created.
Well, okay, so, like, imagine, like, a plane has, like, over 200 people on it.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta fucking count weight into this. There's only so much we could put on a plane.
I get it.
15 minutes is plenty of time to bring you to a safe altitude, so that's what it's calculated for.
I get it. No, I get it.
I don't.
This is not good.
So this part's gonna kind of freak people out.
God, more?
This part, so these incidents are thoroughly investigated. Any incident of rapid decompression is always thoroughly investigated, always prepared.
Hope so.
You know, but incidents of slow decompression is not legally required to be reported.
What?
No.
So, not enough data exists to know how frequently this occurs within
Murder
a year.
everyone involved in that decision. Murder everyone. I peaked my audio. I'm so angry.
I'm so sorry. My question is it because of lack of funding, or is it just them not?
I mean, like, okay, so if you think of, like, rapid depressurization, what I mean by rapid, I mean, like, over the course of, like, 20 to 30 minutes. Like, it's one of those, like, oh, shit, like, the masks go down, we make our descent, right? Like, that's a clearly dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Slow decompression could just be, like, a minor leak, and they notice it slightly affects cabin pressure, and they come down and they repair, like, you know, like something small, like, so I think to a degree.
What if they don't notice?
Then it's not recorded at all because they wouldn't notice.
No, I mean, like with this situation where, like, if it were a slow leak and they don't notice for 8 fucking hours, then
So that brings me to the theory. So applying this to MH370's disappearance, and this is the official report that there is some kind of depressurization failure.
Sure.
So, yes, that is the official statement. If, you know, there is some kind of failure and, you know, the plane was depressurized and people were getting knocked out, I mean, there's no way we know. We don't have the plane crash. We can't even check to see if, you know, the masks were deployed. There's no evidence.
Right, yeah.
It would run on autopilot until the plane ran out of gas and crashed, which would, you know, be in the ocean based on how much fuel that they had. Now, it kind of doesn't sit right with me because, again, if you look at the map, the plane turns twice. So they reach 35,000 feet about, like, 1:20-ish in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Which, you know, if there was any kind of problem with depressurization, it would have been noted before they reached full altitude when he was talking to air control.
Right.
And the turn happened at about 1:30 in the morning, right? Which was after he said that, you know, we've made it to cruising altitude, we're fine.
Are you thinking that the turn was, like, the pilot on purpose?
So one theory is that there's some kind of depressurization issue. They turn around because he decides he needs to make a landing, right? And that was theoretically when the first turn occurs. Now, somewhere between 1:30 in the morning and 1:22 in the morning, because 1:22 is, again, when they go off radar again, another turn occurs. And if, for me, it was on autopilot, I don't know why a second turn would occur. Also consider if something did happen around 1:30, you have 15 to 20 minutes tops of oxygen.
Right.
So that's...
So just drop to 8,000 feet.
Right. So potentially it could have been that he had turned around, that there was something wrong with the air supply. But, you know, if they weren't able to get somewhere, if he wasn't able to make the descent in time, they would all get knocked out. It would be on autopilot until...
a crash.
And if you're looking at the map, you could argue, okay, well, maybe the second turn was to make the landing, but it seemed like they were heading directly towards a landing area, like one of the islands, and the turn is out of the way of the island and towards the ocean. Again, this is really hard for me to explain visually.
Right, yeah.
So I will post this photo on the Instagram so you can follow along. Right. It doesn't sit 100% right with me. And there are many people that don't accept this as a plausible explanation. This is the Malaysian government's official explanation.
Yeah, it does
there's
seem
honestly,
to be like the simplest.
It's the simplest one, and also I don't know a shitload about plane mechanics, so I could be completely wrong on like the second turn not happening.
Right,
like with the time frame, it could have been somebody that woke up and they were able to, you know, maneuver the plane a little bit before it again went back to autopilot. There's only so much oxygen that's available to the crew.
For sure.
This is a reasonable explanation.
Yeah, totally.
I would say. So the second theory, which is somewhat plausible, asterisk on this, is that there was a deliberate intention to crash the plane. Two main schools of thought for this. One is that the pilot Zari intentionally depressurized or failed to pressurize the cabin during the ascent in an act of suicide.
Oof.
I don't know how likely that would be, because again, if like there was an alarm that went off at 12,000 feet, like for the other plane, I highly doubt they'd make it up to 35,000 without there being some kind of recorded incident, especially if the transponder was still on.
Yeah.
But if he was to do that, he would have been able to put his mask on preemptively to avoid being incapacitated. And so the turns would be described. Well, one guy theorizes that this, you know, was personal issues, marital troubles, whatever it is. But Simon Hardy, a Boeing 777 senior pilot, said in an episode of 60 Minutes, if you look very carefully, you can see it's actually a turn to the left and then a long turn to the right. And then he does another left turn. So I spent a long time thinking about what this could be, what technical reason there is for this. And so after 2-3 months of thinking about this, I finally got the answer. Someone was looking out the window. It might be a long emotional goodbye or a short emotional goodbye to his hometown. And that would connect the dots for the two turns, right? Like he explains, like, why would there be two separate turns? So that, I feel like, is a theory made to connect the dots.
Yeah, there's no like evidence, obviously, but there couldn't be.
So others refute this claim. The officials in charge of the search did extensive background checks on the pilot and the co-pilot.
Okay,
they said
well,
there were.
Okay. And
I mean, like they did background checks on like their mental well-being, like indications from family. Everyone said that there was absolutely nothing wrong with them. Like, there were no suicidal warning signs.
Okay.
The whole family said no. This is absolutely out of character.
It does seem to be kind of a ballsy move to like attribute this to one dude's mental health when we have literally no evidence for it. I don't know how much stock.
Like even Zari's family was like, this is literally, it's completely fabricated. He's been made a scapegoat from the beginning. He would never do this.
Right.
Which, like, I guess you could also argue, like, nobody wants to believe your family would do that. But I feel like if they did an official search and they did an extensive mental health check to look for any key factors or warning signs, like, something as big as this, like, even as sneaky as you could be, there are definitely warning signs that would have been able to be found and picked up. Like, you know, there's a lot of warning signs of suicide, and I feel like something would have been able to found, and they ruled it out pretty early on in the investigation. You know, and this again, I understand, I feel like would explain the situation slightly because, you know, it's hard for me to believe that an experienced pilot like Zari, who had his own flight simulator at his house, would not be able to handle a depressurization situation. However, there are instances in history where very, very, very experienced pilots are not able to, you know, like, they're not able to handle a depressurization situation solely because you're not in your right mind anymore.
Right, yeah.
You don't have enough oxygen in your brain.
It makes sense to me.
Right? So, like, you're weighing, like, okay, yeah, I mean, like, why would he do that? Because he's a really, you know, professional pilot. Even experienced people make mistakes.
Right.
And also, if this was a rapid depressurization, if it was a slow depressurization, like either of those scenarios, there's a likelihood that he just wouldn't have been in his right mind. I I mean, like, if you
I
think
can
of the
see
Helios crash, the pilot probably was not entirely in his right mind because there was already a leak at 12,000 feet.
Right.
Like, maybe he just wasn't 100% in clarity, you know?
Yeah, I can see after, a certain amount of oxygen loss to the brain how, I need to turn around is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, points for each, right?
Sure.
And a Canadian avian expert and former crash investigator claimed on CBS that he could say with 100% certainty that it was a deliberate act by the pilot. Again,
That's all right.
It's speculation.
You can say with 100% certainty.
Shut up, dude.
That's pretty bold.
There was millions of dollars spent on the search team, a lot of investigation. It's been one of the biggest mysteries of our time in aviation. But,
I can say with 100% certainty, and they're like, "Sir, please."
Well, goddamn, why didn't we just ask that guy to begin with? Like, we wouldn't have had to spend all this money.
Christ.
Australian investigators claim there isn't a scrap of evidence to prove that he is responsible.
Right.
And this is entirely speculation.
Oh, yeah.
This is entirely a theory that fits into the data, right?
Yeah.
His sister said it was a fabrication. No confirmations either way. They've gone around and they've said, like, okay, well, if you're arguing that this is a deliberate act, perhaps it was some kind of terrorist attack. This, to me, came off as kind of a witch hunt. Because their first target was the single Iranian guy.
Give me a break.
They were like, well, it's gotta be him.
I'm laughing,
because apparently
but
he bought a ticket last minute, and that was suspicious. Then there was there were two people that were traveling with foreign passports. They were all, I think one was Italian, one was Dutch, and one was an asylum seeker, so they ruled those people out.
I just feel like if it were a
The
terrorist
deliberate
attack,
thing just doesn't...
why just a random 777 into the middle of the ocean? Like, you'd think it would be like another 9/11 kind of situation where it would go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. I think that also you got to think about what... I might be totally wrong in this, but wasn't there a situation pretty recently, actually, where a man was trying to commit suicide while flying a plane? And
I heard about that.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, and he was talking to air control the entire time, and they were like, please don't.
Whoa.
And he just kept, spouting out about his life and what was going on. And
Yikes.
I don't know if that's real or not. Here, let me look it up.
Yep, let's double check that before we put that on the official podcast and get some letters.
Yeah. This could all be
like an Onion
Facebook
article in the flesh.
Flabbergander. But also,
sorry, what
if
word
it's
did you
true,
use?
it's not unheard of.
Flabbergander?
Huh? What?
Did you say flabbergander?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
I made it up.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
But regardless of whether it's happened before or not, I don't think that that's a reasonable thing, especially because of the fact that it's just you can't guarantee that based off of one person's mental health, they're going to crash a plane with hundreds of people on board. You know,
even if there was any kind of they had mental illness, that's not a 100% guarantee. That's just this
maybe.
could have happened.
Yeah.
But it's not, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
No.
And I feel like every other kind of offshoot of this is literally just creating a story that you feel seems appropriate.
Right.
I can just as easily say it was a suicidal operation and they were going towards one of the islands and then somebody finally resuscitated themselves by putting on their oxygen and turned the plane into the ocean because they didn't know how to land. That is literally equally as plausible just because it fits the mapping. But I have no fucking idea if that's true whatsoever.
We don't have enough information.
I just read an article saying that there was a suicidal plane crash with passengers in Germany, and then there was also one in Seattle, but there were no passengers in that. So it has happened. It's just super, super rare.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Even a crash repeat, a fatal crash is so unlikely.
Right.
Even with these problems that happen in planes, malfunctions are usually dealt with and you're usually fine.
Yes. Super safe to fly. Just Yeah.
Everyone be okay. Literally, you have a 1 in 77 chance of dying every time you get in your car.
Oh,
So
God,
don't
I
even
hate
at
that.
me about planes.
And
okay?
y'all play the lottery like, this time I'm gonna win.
What is it? It was a tweet when it was like, people be texting and driving and like, it'll never happen to me, but they buy lottery tickets every week and they're like, this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're all individuals and we're all special.
You're
Anyway.
more likelihood of getting in a car accident and dying on your way home from the grocery store with your lottery ticket in hand. So, really cool.
Oh, that's fucked up. But
Yeah, this is screwed up.
so now we're getting to the sad gang.
More
So I'm
sads.
gonna sit on my stool, turn on a crackling of the fire. No, I
strum
won't do
your
that.
guitar.
That's so wildly inappropriate for what I'm about to talk about.
Jeez.
Oh my god.
So, after theory 2, I kind of hit an impasse. Because these are the 2 most logical explanations.
Sure.
And the second one, I'm saying that very generously.
Right. There's no evidence.
There's no evidence. We don't have anything to
not
look
probable.
at.
And the problem is there's no real evidence of anything.
No.
So-
Literally, it's
Right,
just
hence-
like a map. That's it.
The mystery of it all.
And so I could probably write an additional 3 pages on all of the crazy conspiracies, ranging from like Pitbull and Shakira predicting the incident to aliens to government conspiracies and like the Malaysian government secretly planned this, but
How about we
Yeah,
don't?
like, you can
no,
just
I
not.
mean, that was my executive decision last night, is I kind of anticipated this to be kind of a lighthearted, crazy conspiracy topic, but somewhere in the middle of me researching, I found pictures of the families affected by this, and it's just pictures of them collapsing in the airport when they find out that the plane is not going to be found.
Yeah, these are like
And,
real people.
This is like real people, like this is a Nexus event, probably like in the immediate sense, maybe like 10,000 people were affected by this through like knowing the people on board.
Yeah.
And every theory beyond the 2 I mentioned here are just extrapolation and conclusion making. And I'll transition into my rant with a quote from a man who knows what he's talking about.
Good.
Richard Quest, CNN's aviation correspondent, has dismissed the rogue pilot theory, noting that pilot suicide is rare and there's no evidence to make a case against the captain, as I said earlier. And the theory that the captain did it has been around since day 1, and this program didn't really advance the argument as to the evidence that proves it. I promise you, there is not a single shred of new evidence as to what happened to that plane. There's a lot of extrapolation. There are a lot of conclusions, and people thinking if you take 1 and 1, it must equal 2. But was it nefarious? Was it mechanical? Was it something else? We still don't know.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we don't, right? We never found the black box recordings. We never found the plane. We've only found fragments, which confirm that it crashed, probably in the ocean. And so we're kind of left with this void where we can only speculate. And I understand that for a lot of people, it is, very entertaining to come up with scenarios and ideas for how this might happen. But, I think at the end of the day, like if I were to pick any scenario that made sense, I think it's probably some kind of mechanical failure.
Yeah, most likely.
In some degree. And I think the reason why people come up with these crazy explanations is because, life is very fragile. You said that in the previous heavy hitter. You could die by getting into the car and going to the airport, right?
Yep.
Going to work, getting in a plane, getting a minor cold. And I think people prefer these insane scenarios because it makes us feel like that would never happen to us, right? Like, if you're like, oh, no, it was the plane's suicidal captain, like, the statistical likelihood of that happening to you is smaller than, I guess, a plane accident in people's mind.
Yeah.
So it's almost like escaping this fear that it was just some random chance. Like, it was kind of out of control of the people on board. It was a mechanical malfunction that really, like, just happened.
People
right?
like stories where they can, like, heroics their way out of it.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with some of the crazier conspiracy theories, like, it was aliens or it was a terrorist attack, then you can, like, make the argument, oh, well, if someone had just James Bonded, then it would have been fine, you know?
Yeah.
But...
yeah, just something to make you feel like it wasn't just random.
Yeah.
You
it
know?
was just a leak or a mechanical issue. Something went wrong. No one knew about it. That was it. Ugh.
Shrug. You know? And I think... I think, you know, it's strange enough, this plane thing doesn't keep me up at night. Like, again, my friend is a pilot. He's reassured me time and time again, like, the safest thing you can do is get on a plane rather than get in a car. I think the most harm that is done by these crazy scenarios is really on the families. Yeah. You know, because I can't imagine what it's like waiting in an airport and finding out that someone you literally just texted maybe, like, 7 hours ago you'll never talk to again.
Yeah, that's the wildest thing. When,
right, and so
like,
this
you
happened
see text strings from the families that are like, yep, like 10 minutes ago they used their free Wi-Fi to tell us that they were going to come in safe, and now they're dead forever. It's crazy.
And, you know, this happened in 2014.
Yeah.
The announcement, the final verdict came out in 2018. And the Malaysian government is like, we looked at everything. Like, it's got to be a mechanical failure. That's all we got. We don't have a lot of information to go from. Like, this is probably the answer. I'm sure that doesn't sit right with the family who's been waiting 4 years for an answer for some kind of, like, oh, you know, it was just this crazy event. And, like, yeah, I think part of it is denial. They don't want to accept that their loved one died through random accident.
Right, and
like,
I don't want it
really hard.
I don't want this to cross over into this shitty, like, oh, well, you know, the families are grieving and grief does crazy things. Like, in no world do I want to invalidate the fact that, you know, these families are thinking that it was something else. Yeah. Some of the evidence isn't really in favor of a mechanical issue. I get it. And the bottom line is we'll never know.
Yes.
But, like...
which is so hard for the family.
And there's no good answer. Like, even if we're 100% right and it was just a mechanical failure and the simplest thing really is the answer, we will never know.
Yeah. Like, I really, truly don't believe we're ever going to find the plane.
No.
Like,
at this
point, if it crashed in the water, the likelihood that it's intact or it's visible or it's not covered, like, the ocean's big as fuck, dude. Like, the likelihood we'll find it in the ocean is slim.
Eloquently.
The ocean is big as fuck. Can that be the title of the episode?
Oh, right, guys. Okay, I get it. I mean, but the reason, you know, I make this my little rant is, you know, I felt scummy because I feel like this event turned into people having the opportunity to title their articles. I used Google Maps and solved the missing plane case, which I'm not using that exact title, but that was, like, pretty damn close to at least 3 articles I found.
You know who you are.
Like, stuff like, am I crazy for knowing the answer? Or, like,
yes.
I zoomed in really hard on this one area. Not to call out Daniel Boyer, but...
Oof. Spill the tea, Olivia.
On October 13th, this year, a guy was like, oh, I found the crashed plane using Google Maps in the jungle, and I can see the logo on the plane. And I fucking looked at your picture, Daniel, and it looks like a white rock, okay?
Twist yourself into a pretzel and suck your own dick.
Like, I don't know, and, like, I'm sure so much of this has to do with there's a 3 million pound finder's fee, right?
My whole thing is, like, there's millions of dollars of research that go into these things with professionals that know exactly what the fuck they're doing, and you're telling me fucking Daniel is sitting there on his couch like, no, my Saturday afternoon found it.
I zoomed in, bitch.
Where was this published? Do you know?
It was like a Daily Star article, so it was like a gossipy thing, and they're like, local film editor, and I'm like, oh, get fucked.
Even worse.
Like, you know, and the thing that kept me up at night truly was I think this was really, in the grand scheme of things, a really benign event. Like, something went wrong.
It was awful, but...
It was horrible. People died. Like,
right.
You know, everyone's affected by this, and it was turned into this crazy, like that's
it was 100%.
I feel disappointed in myself coming into this expecting like fun crazy conspiracies, and I met with like tragedy. Like this was fucked up, you know?
And it was turned into such a media circus. Like it was
right?
Was this the instance where someone called into a news station and they were like, "We have the names of the pilots. Holy fook, we too low," and they read it on national television?
Oh shit, I don't fucking know that.
That might have been this one,
God.
and it might have been the Beijing Airlines. But yeah, that was a thing that someone did, and God, the reporter lost her job.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, because
Good.
like, what?
Good.
What? Yeah, I think that's what keeps me up at night, is just the public response to stuff like this is so scummy, and like...
Yeah, well... Oh, you know me and public responses to certain things.
Yeah.
With my AIDS epidemic, the thing that kept me up the most about it was the fact that how the government and the public responded to it just did not care. Yeah. And I think that's like, you know, we can only... I think in people's minds, they're really trying to... Help.
Yeah.
Which
I don't know. Like, some people, sure.
And I can understand that.
Yeah.
But... Or it's fun to, like, come up with these different things, but you gotta understand, like, what Olivia said. There were people crying in the airport over the loss of their loved ones. Yeah. And they deserve respect and real evidence. And you telling them that you know what happened to their dead family member
is... Because you used Google Maps.
Right, it's just so disrespectful. And, like, these are real people who most likely spent weeks, months, most likely years on the internet watching television trying to figure out what information was floating around out there. Your articles are doing harm. Like, and this is such a weird connection, but like, you know the kind of people who like write fan fiction about live people?
What? Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
like people write smutty fan fiction about actual human beings who exist. Like, similar but different, but like you're writing stuff about real human people who live on planet Earth with us.
Yeah.
Then you don't know what you're talking about. You're trying to get your 15 minutes of fame, and it's awful.
There was so much clickbait with this. Like, it was disgusting. Like, there were a handful that were really respectfully done. Like, I wish I had saved all the ones that I thought were really, really well done. I'm going to do that in the future.
Yeah.
That were like, this is a terrible tragedy. And honestly, at the end of the day, you know, Occam's razor, like, the simplest solution is probably the right one. And then there were also people who were like, I have done it. Me, Jim Jimison from San Diego. And you're like, oh my God. He's
Shut
like,
up, Jim.
You see, I did the math, which is something I haven't used.
An English major, did the math. Christ.
And it just... I don't know. It just makes me mad because, like, you know, again, it wasn't taken seriously. And, like, I was so anxious about coming in today because I only wanted to report on the, like, theories that seemed plausible. And there were two. And so I was super duper worried that, like, I hadn't done my due diligence. But then I also kind of realized, like, halfway through reading all of this, I definitely would not be doing my due diligence by enabling the behavior of people that have been writing just like garbage articles.
Why give it a platform?
Right.
Also, I need to correct myself. The names issue was not this one. It was Asiana Flight 214. So.
Yeah, get fucked that reporter too. So.
Awful.
Yeah.
My takeaway in this is please take things seriously. Don't be afraid of flying. Stop buying lottery tickets.
Yes, please do that. You're gonna get hit by lightning before you win the lottery.
Wow, is that a promise?
Oh my God.
I'm predicting right now, you listener, you right there sitting in your car, I see it in your future. You're gonna get hit by motherfucking lightning.
Also, don't text and drive.
Don't text and drive, please.
Yeah, please don't text and drive. Don't do distracted stuff. Do you want to know something crazy? Is I had a dream the other night that I was working my shift from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m.
That's awful.
And I walked into 7-Eleven to get like something to drink, and then the lottery was worth $16 million, and I was like, I'm gonna buy a ticket, and then I won, and then I ran into my place of work, and I went, I'm leaving, and then I bought myself a home. And then I woke up to go to my 1 to 9 a.m. shift.
Oh.
That's so sad.
That's a mood.
Yeah, we joke, and, like, we're fairly irreverent, but we try to give this stuff the respect it deserves. Like, this is tragic, and our hope is that we're giving you information that is legitimate, that we're being educational. We try to make it light, but sometimes you just gotta, like, take a minute and digest it for what it is. And this was tragic. It was awful.
This was sad.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you guys learn anything new? So what was your takeaway, though? Because, like, I feel like I didn't know a lot
100%
about
of it was new.
Yeah,
I knew
100%.
just the structure, the bare bones of what had happened. I knew that a plane had disappeared, and then past that, I think it just fell off the radar in America.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I learned the whole they don't have to check when there's minor air pressure leaks. That
we don't have to bring that up at the end. We don't have to remind the listeners.
I learned that I'm scared. God, I gotta fly.
I'm riddled with anxiety and fear.
Oh, my brain, it hurts.
It's okay. We're gonna be fine. Everything's fine.
I get on my plane. They're like, "Welcome on," and I like stop.
I like how the close of our show is,
welcoming
it's
me.
okay to ride planes, and then I'm like rocking back and forth in the corner like, it's totally fine.
Can I share one fun fact before we leave about that Helios flight?
Sure.
I'm 99% sure that on that Helios flight, they landed because they had an issue with the door lock, thought they fixed it, and took off again.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate you.
If you want to leave an iTunes review, please.
If you want to leave an iTunes
appreciate
review,
it. We appreciate
our Instagram is at TTKMeUp. You can follow us on Twitter, all our personal social media.
TTKMeUp.com. Well, guys, it's been a really great night.
Wow.
It's been real.
Wow.
Deuces.
Wow.
Bye.
See ya.
This is ASMR. I am very sweaty. Sorry, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Stop! I hate it when you do that noise.
Disgusting. That's fucking gross. I hate that so much.
Wait, hold on. Wait, can I do it? Wait.
This is me drinking out of my McDonald's cup from yesterday.
I fucking hate
Can
all
this
of
go at the
you.
end?